Tokyo's freezing cold, Nippon Budokan, the sacred hall of Japanese karate. 12,000 people fill every seat, silent and solemn, as if attending a ritual rather than a sporting event. Winter breath mingles with the scent of fresh hinoki wood and newly laid tatami. This is the opening of the All Japan Karate Championship, a special event, the demonstration everyone has come to witness. Officials from Japan's Ministry of Culture sit in the honored section. Deep velvet chairs trimmed in gold, clearly separated from the regular seats below. Beneath them are veteran masters from ancient schools, Western press delegations hunting for stories to take home, young athletes from across Japan drawn to see the woman who dominates karate with their own eyes. And at the center of it all, standing under the stark white lights, pouring straight down onto the tatami, is Takeda Aiko, the steel cherry blossom. They call her that because she is both graceful and ruthless. 62 professional fights, 62 consecutive victories. Not a single loss, not a single draw, not even a moment where she came close to losing. Japan's undefeated female karate champion. The longest winning streak in women's karate history. 1m68 tall, 58 kilograms of disciplined steel, forged through the brutal winters of Aomori under the merciless training of her father, Master Takeda Goro. She has crushed every opponent placed before her. Male opponents, female opponents, it doesn't matter. Her mawashi-geri kicks have deformed countless faces and shattered countless dreams. Her 62-fight winning streak is legendary. It began when she was just 19 years old. A girl from the frigid north. Now she is 29. 10 years undefeated. No one in Japan can touch her. And tonight is supposed to be different. Nippon Budokan glows in the winter chill. For months prior, the conservative karate establishment had repeated one accusation. Takeda Aiko is only undefeated because she only faces women, that her victories prove nothing beyond a physical mismatch, that if modern Japanese karate truly wants to demonstrate its power, it must face a random test against an opponent of any gender, any style, with no restriction. The American press in Tokyo has not hesitated to pour fuel on the fire. They have written skeptical articles questioning whether karate is merely an elegant ritual lacking real combat effectiveness. And they have come to Budokan tonight with the mindset of people waiting to dissect a classical martial art. Under that pressure, the Japan Karate Federation decides to do something unprecedented, turn the opening of the national championship into a public experiment. A wordless declaration made through action. The Federation president steps on to the tatami, his voice deep and resonant, announcing that Takeda Aiko will select a completely random person from the crowd of 12,000 spectators for a light sparring session of 3 minutes. No pre-selection, no backstage arrangement, no cheating, purely random. A direct challenge to everyone who doubts the strength of Japanese karate. The Budokan shakes instantly. Some spectators exhale sharply, small murmurs spreading across the tiers. The Japanese masters keep their faces impassive, but the tension in their gi shoulders shows they understand the level of risk. The American press chuckles with delight, as if they are finally about to get a sensational story to bring home, because everyone understands that even a lucky strike from a random opponent could shake the honor of Japanese karate before the eyes of the world. But Aiko does not hesitate. As she steps down from the tatami, the entire Budokan feels stretched taut, the silence almost audible. Every eye locks onto her, following each light but certain step. She walks along the rows, her gaze sweeping over each group. The section of karate students and youths with reverence in their eyes too easy, not suitable. The tall, broad-shouldered, noisy Western guests, full of bravado, strong-looking but lacking the feeling of pure randomness. The rows of Japanese masters with stern eyes, iconic faces of centuries-old tradition cannot choose them, as that would destroy the meaning of the challenge. And then, in a distant row near the curved wall of the Budokan, Aiko sees him, a small man, compact build, narrow shoulders, about 1.7 to 1 tall, roughly 64 kilograms, completely modest compared to the male Japanese fighters in the same area. He wears a dark shirt, neat but plain, with no air of someone who came here to become part of the performance. He is not smiling, not speaking, not showing excitement like the crowd around him. He simply sits there, quietly observing every movement with deep black eyes that are impossible to read. That stillness makes Aiko pause, not because she knows who he is, but because her intuition, the same intuition that has saved her in the tensest fights, whispers that this small man is unlike anyone else in the arena. She points, her voice firm and clear. Anata, Koko Ikite. The entire Budokan holds its breath. A few people exclaim in confusion, "Why him?" The man stands up slowly. His companion leans over and whispers in English, "You don't have to do this." He only replies quietly, "It's fine." His voice is gentle and calm, enough to leave the other man stunned. Then he walks down the steps. No tension. What the audience does not know, what Aiko cannot know, is that this man has a very clear reason for being in Japan. His name is Bruce Lee. Actor, martial artist, martial philosopher, the man shaking up the Hong Kong film world. He has just arrived in Tokyo at the invitation of Toho Studios to discuss a new co-production project between the two film industries. But that is not all. Bruce is on a deep research journey into Eastern martial systems to perfect his philosophy of Jeet Kune Do, the way of fighting he calls the art of freedom, of absolute efficiency. And Japan, with its Bushido spirit, its iron discipline of karate, its profound philosophical foundation, is an essential stop on that journey. Accompanying Bruce is Dan Inosanto, his student and closest friend, who has deliberately sat in the shadows so no one would recognize either of them. But that discretion now becomes meaningless as Bruce walks toward the tatami where Aiko waits. Laughter erupts from the American press section. "He's too small. It's over. This will be quick." The mockery spreads, but not loudly. It is the classic Western kind, confident they have already predicted the outcome. But in the section of Japanese masters, some eyes suddenly change. They do not know who the man is. They have never heard his name, but they see what the crowd does not, a strange stillness in every step, a demeanor neither arrogant nor showy. As Bruce approaches the edge of the tatami, the entire Budokan seems to freeze. What will happen when Japan's undefeated legend faces a small, unknown man? And in the moment Aiko and Bruce stand facing each other, only a few meters apart, the Budokan sinks into absolute silence, a silence that only precedes fateful moments. He steps onto the tatami still in his ordinary dark shirt. No gi, no fighting stance. That puzzles the audience. A few American reporters chuckle quietly. A few Japanese masters frown slightly at the lack of formality. But Takeda Aiko does not. She looks at him as if seeing an anomaly in the world she knows so well. In this small man, there is a strange stillness, a quietness, so deep it is impossible to gauge. The promoter steps forward a few paces, voice booming through the speakers. "Your name?" The man answers, "Bruce Lee." The Budokan remains dead silent. In 1971, that name does not yet have the power to shock the sacred hall of Japanese karate. The veteran masters in the honored seats merely nod slightly, noting the name as a necessary formality, then turn their attention back to Aiko, the center of the night. No one knows that in just a few years, the name Bruce Lee will echo across the world. The promoter continues, "Do you have any martial arts experience?" Bruce nods lightly. "I train in Wing Chun and my own system, Jeet Kune Do." Those words make a few Japanese masters lean forward, exchanging questioning glances. Wing Chun? Jeet Kune Do? Not from karate, not judo, not any Kempo branch. A strange school. Meanwhile, the Western press section bursts into delighted laughter. A kung fu guy shows up at the Japan Nationals. perfect. This fight is going to become a meme. But beneath the laughter is genuine curiosity. They have never seen anyone stand so calmly when facing an absolute champion like Aiko. The referee steps to the center of the tatami, voice clear, slow, and ceremonial. 3 minutes, no knockouts, no lethal attacks. This is a demonstration, not a decisive match. Show technique, maintain the spirit of Budo. Aiko nods. Bruce nods, but as they take their positions, the contrast is stark, like a line drawn between two worlds. Aiko enters a perfect Shotokan stance, her body forming straight lines that cut the air, eyes locked on target, breath steady, hips tight, shoulders relaxed. The body language of a fighter honed over a decade. And Bruce stands as if he has no intention of fighting at all. Feet not lined on axis, center of gravity loose like water, shoulders naturally dropped, hands hanging loosely at his sides, his posture so light that a passing breeze could sway him. But it is precisely that lightness that makes a few Japanese masters tighten their fingers. What they are seeing is not lack of preparation, but freedom from preparation. The bell rings. Aiko attacks immediately, just as instinct dictates for a fighter accustomed to ending fights before the opponent even understands what is happening. Her first Kizamizuki snaps out sharp as an arrow, but Bruce merely tilts his head 1 centimeter, exactly 1 centimeter, and the punch passes through the empty space where his cheek had just been. No step back, no block, just an impossibly small movement. Aiko immediately fires a Gyakuzuki, her signature reverse punch. But Bruce only twists his hips slightly, as if his body slides through an invisible current, and once again, the strike touches nothing but air. Some spectators gasp. They have watched hundreds of karate matches, but never seen anyone evade like this. Not in the rhythm of a fighter, not with karate reflexes, but with something softer, lighter, more unpredictable. Aiko tries a maigeri, her front kick exploding like a door being smashed. Bruce merely lifts his heel, rotates his axis slightly, and the kick passes straight through the gap between them. Time seems to stretch just long enough for the audience to realize one thing. Bruce is not resisting Aiko's attacking force. He stands outside it. He passes through it. He observes it like one observes the wind sensing, just enough to avoid, without needing to confront. Aiko begins to accelerate. Chain punches. Feints. Rhythm changes. She tries to break his structure, force him into a corner, apply pressure with both speed and weight. But Bruce's body seems to have no edges for her to grip. He is not pushed back. He does not counterattack. He simply glides, and then contact. A light touch on Aiko's wrist at the exact moment her center shifts left. Not hard, not painful, but it makes her freeze. Enough for every Japanese master to recognize the terrifying truth. This man is reading every movement of Aiko. Not just evading, predicting, not just observing, intervening at the weak point in a fraction of a second. A leaden heaviness settles over the Budokan. No one speaks, but everyone feels it. Aiko is in trouble. She immediately unleashes a mawashi geri. The roundhouse kick whips out like a lash. This time Bruce only slightly changes his foot axis. The kick slices past his cheek, less than 2 centimeters away. The crowd hisses, not because of the kick, but because of the way Bruce evades as if he had already been in a different position before the kick was even launched. Aiko grits her teeth. This is her strongest, cleanest, sharpest technique. If the man in front of her had merely stood there to test the challenge, he would have been finished. But no. He is not even breathing hard, not blinking, not changing expression. Aiko decides to use her final technique, Ushiro Mawashi Geri, the most dangerous, lethal, fastest rear roundhouse kick, the one that earned her the name Steel Cherry Blossom. She spins, hips exploding, maximum torque channeled into her heel. But at the very moment the kick reaches full speed, Bruce steps in, not to the side, not backward, but directly into the center of her rotation. The move that would have destroyed an ordinary fighter instantly. Bruce's left hand lightly places on her leg, locking the axis of force just before the kick fully extends. His right hand extends upward, stopping 1 inch from her throat. 1 inch. The entire Budokan freezes like statues. The referee rushes in to separate them, face pale. Aiko stands still, heart pounding wildly, breath ragged. She does not understand when she lost, does not understand why her strongest technique was neutralized with a mere touch, does not understand why the small man before her is so utterly calm. He did not want to finish her. He only wanted her to know that he could, and that for a 10-year undefeated fighter is 1,000 times more terrifying than any knockout. The Budokan sinks into absolute silence. No cheers, no applause, not a word. Only stunned stillness before the sight of a legend rendered powerless without suffering any physical harm. Aiko bows deeply. This time, not out of ceremony, but pure acknowledgement. The man before her does not belong to the world of combat she knows. He stands outside it. He rises above it. And in the moment she bows, everyone in the Budokan understands that they have just witnessed the collapse of expectation, the arrival of the unforeseeable, and a story that will be retold for decades to come. The atmosphere in the Budokan grows heavy. Takeda. Aiko still stands there, her breathing not yet returned to normal, heart still racing after the failed pivot. Before her, Bruce Lee stands straight, light, calm, as if what just happened has nothing to do with him. No one speaks. 12,000 people are utterly silent. Not a whisper, not a camera click. Even the referee stands frozen, as if he has just witnessed something beyond every framework he knows. Aiko raises her head, her eyes still sharp but no longer carrying the absolute certainty that was always there. In the depths of her gaze there is something new, a tiny crack in the belief forged over 10 undefeated years. She asks, voice steady but low as a thread, "Why didn't you hit me when you could have ended it?" Bruce looks at her for a moment, his gaze neither judging nor sad nor proud. He simply looks as if she has asked the most obvious thing in the world. Then he answers, voice soft but ringing in the silent space like a metal bell struck against stone. Because this is a demonstration, not destruction. Those words do not provoke an outburst, do not create an explosion like in Western fights. They fall into the Budokan like a pebble into a still lake, sending out widening concentric ripples across the arena. The Japanese understand immediately. No explanation needed, no translation required. The spirit of Budo, restraint, respect for the opponent, that is what they value above victory. And they realize that the man before them, though wearing no gi, belonging to no karate lineage, understands that spirit more clearly than many who have devoted their lives to it. The shock in their eyes begins to fade, replaced by respect, a wordless respect, not born from power, but from the fact that this man chose not to use his power. Aiko bows again, not the bow of ceremony, but a bow of gratitude. Gratitude because he did not end the match with destruction. Gratitude because he showed her a new boundary of martial arts she had never known. Gratitude because he was strong enough not to need to prove that strength by striking her body. In contrast, the American press section falls into confusion. They came to record the scene of a Japanese female champion crushing a small, unknown man. They waited for blood, for a fall, for what they call sensational content. But what happened leaves them speechless. No strikes landed, no gruesome scene, no one knocked down, no simple story to tell Western audiences. They do not know what to write about a man who evaded every blow without striking back, then stopped his hand 1 centimeter from his opponent's throat, as if he held the switch to life itself. One American reporter mutters quietly, "What did we just witness?" No one answers. Bruce steps back 1 step, as lightly as he stepped onto the tatami, and in that very moment, the entire Budokan seems to release a long-held breath. No one says it aloud, but in every gaze, from the highest seats to the ones closest to the tatami, everyone feels that tonight they did not see a fight. They saw a lesson, a new boundary, a simple and blinding truth. Some people are so strong, they do not need to win to prove it. Bruce Lee stands in that circle of light, and the Budokan, for the first time in many years, bows its head to a man who does not belong to karate, but understands Budo in the deepest way. The Budokan still trembles faintly after the moment Bruce stops his hand an inch from Aiko's throat. But the reaction within Japan's karate community is far from unified. In the rows of veteran masters, the stern faces that have spent decades guarding tradition begin to show clear discomfort. To them, what just happened is not a beautiful lesson in the spirit of Budo. They see a threat in it. A foreigner, wearing no gi, belonging to no karate lineage, standing right in the heart of Budokan and rendering Japan's undefeated champion powerless without throwing a single strike. An old master clenches his fist until the knuckles turn white and whispers to the man beside him that this is an insult. Another speaks low but sharply. He follows no form. That is not karate. Heavy nods spread through their rows the silent anger of those who believe tradition has just been torn apart before their eyes. But in the area of the young athletes, the atmosphere is completely different. Young eyes light up in a way the conservative masters cannot comprehend. They do not see blasphemy. They see liberation. A young karateka whispers, "He moves like water, no form yet still effective." The one next to him nods. Not like karate, but right. They are captivated by the way Bruce evades. Not rigid, not angular, not following the familiar attack-block counter pattern. He evades with freedom. He avoids with minimalism. Every movement neither excessive nor lacking, as if he sees the path of the attack before Aiko even launches it. To them, it is not a threat. It is an invitation. An invitation to step out of the mold, to look at martial arts with fresh eyes. And it is this young generation, not the masters, who are the first to realize they have just seen the future. And in the back rows, Dan Inasanto, the only one in Budokan who truly knows who Bruce is and how strong he is, stands still and silent. But his eyes reflect everything. He is not surprised. He simply watches with the gaze of someone who has waited a very long time for this moment, the moment Bruce steps out from articles, small training rooms in Seattle, quiet debates on fighting philosophy, and becomes an event. Dan deeply understands that what just happened is not a successful demonstration. It is a crack, a small crack, but one capable of bending the entire structure of traditional karate if the Japanese choose to look straight at it. He sees the conservative masters with tense faces and knows they will resist. He sees the young students with shining eyes, as if a new world has just opened, and knows they will pursue this path to the end. And he sees Aiko, standing motionless on the tatami, trying to comprehend how someone can defeat strength with gentleness, surpass speed with stillness, pierce perfect technique with simplicity, and he knows Bruce has touched the deepest part of her. A seed has just been planted. The Budokan remains silent, but beneath that silence, Dan clearly senses the shift. Japanese martial arts have just been challenged in a quiet but inescapable way, and everyone present understands, even if no one says it, that tonight a door has opened. Whatever steps through that door will change everything. 2 days after the Budokan night, Tokyo is still buzzing about the moment Takeda Aiko was halted by a small, unknown man. The news spreads through ramen shops, tea houses, dojos, and university sports hallways. While conservative masters try to deny it, young karateka attempt to mimic Bruce's movements in the air. And in a corner of Shinjuku, down a narrow alley barely wide enough for 2 people to pass, a small hinoki wood dojo is preparing to host an event that participants will later simply call the day the world opened. The dojo is old. The tatami floor is worn. The ceiling beams are stained with smoke from past winters. Inside there is nothing but white walls, a rack of bokken, and the warm scent of wood. But that morning, 20 young karateka from across Tokyo stand in line, backs straight, eyes bright, some even trembling slightly in disbelief at what is about to happen. They came because word spread that Bruce Lee, the man who silenced Budokan, agreed to teach a short session before leaving Japan. The session is not part of any official program. It belongs to no karate organization. It is like a secret meeting passed by whispers the night before. Bruce enters, still walking lightly and straight, like wind slipping through a door crack. He brings no props, no uniform, not even shoes. Just bare hands and a gaze sharp as a blade, yet calm as a still lake. Danny Nasanto follows, closes the door, leaving the space entirely to Bruce. No long lecture. No opening ceremony. Bruce simply says one sentence, short and direct, but it makes 20 hearts pound. Today I am not teaching you a martial art. I am teaching you how to see. Then he steps to the center of the tatami, faces the group, and raises one finger as if preparing to write something in the air. Interception, he says. Stop it the moment the intention arises. He asks one student to attack with Kyakuzuki, the young man about 20, face still youthful, but eyes full of passion, throws a straight punch with the speed the young Japanese teen prides itself on. But Bruce does not wait for the punch to arrive. He steps in before the opponent's shoulder even turns, lightly touches the extending arm, and suddenly the student's entire force vanishes as if drained. Not painful, not forceful, but completely nullified. 20 people stare in disbelief. Bruce explains, "Don't strike the technique, strike the intention." He demonstrates again. This time, before the student's arm twitches, Bruce is already in the instant before the strike is born, seizing the intention the moment it forms. To defeat an attack, he says, meet it before it becomes an attack. He moves to the second principle, efficiency. He picks up a small piece of chalk from the dojo corner and draws an almost invisible line on the tatami. Every unnecessary movement, he says, is a missed opportunity. Another student attacks. Bruce only rotates half a step, tilts his head a few centimeters, and the powerful strike passes through empty air. He does not evade far. He does not retreat deeply. He moves only enough to avoid contact. You train thousands of times to perfect a form, Bruce says, but sometimes the smallest movement, one not in any pattern, is what saves your life. The young karateka look at each other. This is something they have never heard from any teacher. Karate taught them to stand firm, attack hard, maintain perfect form. Bruce is teaching the opposite. If form binds you, abandon form. Finally, the third principle, adaptation. Bruce points to his own hands, then to the wooden window frame. Water, he says, flows to fit the shape of the container. Martial arts are the same. Do not force the world to fit your technique. Let your technique change to fit the world. He asks the whole group to attack lightly, one at a time, in rhythm. 20 students charge in cycles, each delivering one strike punch, kick, sweep, shift. Bruce never strikes hard at anyone. He only turns, tilts, slides, gently pushes, moves with absolute minimalism and precision. One loses balance the moment he steps in. Another is led off course before completing the technique. No one falls, no one is hurt, but no one touches him. When it is the turn of a particularly sharp young student about 18 or 19, eyes like knives and movements faster than the rest, Bruce not only avoids but touches the boy's elbow at the exact point, spinning him a full circle without letting him fall. Bruce smiles. You will go far. That teenager will later become one of Japan's greatest karate instructors, spending his life recounting the morning that changed everything. The session lasts 4 hours, but no one feels tired. They feel as if they have just stepped through a door they did not know existed. Bruce ends with one sentence. Do not become a slave to technique. Make technique serve you. The 20 karateka bow deeply. When Bruce and Dan leave that small dojo, no one speaks, but everyone understands they have just witnessed the birth of something Japan was not prepared to receive. Something too free, too fluid, too alive to belong to any school, yet touching the deepest essence of every martial art. The secret Shinjuku session ends, but its echo spreads across Tokyo faster than any punch. Within a single day, once stern dojos become simmering hubs of discussion. In an old Shotokan dojo in Kanda, young students gather in groups, trying to recreate the touch and dissolve force movement Bruce performed. They punch, twist, shift axis, but the more they try, the more they realize what Bruce did is not in any kata they have learned. One says quietly, "Sensei never taught us to evade like that." Another replies, "Because this is not evading, this is seeing ahead." Those whispers spread like an underground stream, quiet but unstoppable. In Osaka, a middle-aged master sits before his students and recounts hearing that the man named Bruce Lee uses no form, enters no stance, yet is always in the right place to avoid being hit. He says no more, but the uncertainty in his eyes makes his students understand that something in the foundation they trust is being shaken. In Kyoto, a few young karateka gather after practice, debating what Jeet Kune Do is. One says it is a Chinese martial branch. Another calls it a philosophy. Another says it is not a martial art, but a way of thinking. And what surprises everyone most is, no one mocks it, no one opposes it. For the first time, Japanese karate opens space for doubt, for questions instead of affirmations, for the idea that form may not be everything. But while the young generation eagerly dissects every movement of Bruce, the conservative masters tighten ranks. To them, what happened at Budokan is not enlightenment, but a threat. They warn students not to imitate that undisciplined movement, calling Jeet Kune Do formless chaos, a mindset that breaks martial etiquette. Yet the more they forbid it, the greater the attraction. Jeet Kune Do spreads through Tokyo like a secret code, passed from dojo to dojo through whispers about the man who evades like water. And amid all the turmoil, Takeda Aiko sits alone in an empty training room, staring at the fists that carried her through 10 undefeated years. She remembers the feeling when her signature technique was neutralized as lightly as a feather falling into wind. She remembers the moment Bruce's hand stopped an absurdly small distance from her throat. She remembers his eyes, not the eyes of a victor, but of someone who understands something she does not yet understand. And that is what confuses her more than any defeat. In the days that follow, students ask her about Jeet Kune Do. The press wants her to explain. Dojos invite her to speak. But there is one sentence she only dares keep in her heart. I did not lose by technique. I lost by freedom. And that is the greatest impact of that brief appearance. Bruce did not defeat Japanese karate. Bruce made Japanese karate ask questions for the first time in many years. Karate, a martial art built on form and tradition, now faces the most dangerous thought. To be truly strong, perhaps one must know how to change. The spread of the story does not stop at the dojos. When the press gets involved, truth is immediately bent according to media inertia, choosing the most sellable version, not the most accurate one. The next morning, American papers run big headlines. Karate Queen nearly beat unknown Chinese man, a title that completely reverses what happened in Budokan. They report that Takeda Aiko dominated from start to finish, that the small Chinese man only dodged by luck, that the referee intervened to protect him from being knocked out. Those lines are not outright lies. They are written in the familiar, blur the truth, style-taking, what can be misinterpreted and pushing it a little further. They omit that Aiko never touched Bruce even once, omit the 1-inch stop, omit the absolute precision in every movement. To them, a national female karate champion is a far more appealing image than an unknown Asian man. The simpler the story, the easier to sell tickets and papers. In Japan, the press is not much better. Many papers, wanting to protect karate's honor, choose to describe the match as a strange, unclassifiable demonstration. They use vague language, treating it as if it were merely an artistic performance, not a real confrontation. One major paper even writes, "Takeda Aiko displayed clear superiority over a foreign man with non-standard technique." Words like superiority, non-standard, demonstration are not used to describe but to soothe, to hide the fact that Japanese karate just faced something they cannot explain with their familiar technical system. Some articles exaggerate to the point of claiming Bruce nearly fell after a roundhouse kick, something that never happened. But what distorts the story most is not any single article, but how readers receive it. They believe the part they want to believe. They choose the version that matches national pride or sensational curiosity. And in that gap, truth is swallowed whole. Yet the 12,000 people who witnessed the match that day are not easily fooled. Tokyo trains the next morning are filled with whispered debates. A student says, "The papers made it up. I saw clearly she never touched him." An old master tells his student, "They write what they understand, not what happened." An elderly woman recounts feeling as if a ghost moved between the strikes. And Aiko, the eye of the storm, reads all those articles in silence. She is not angry, not ashamed. She only sees one thing wrong. They write as if Bruce were a minor detail. For her, he is the pivot of the entire moment. She remembers his precision clearly, remembers the feeling of her signature technique vanishing in his hands. Remembers the moment his hand stopped, before her throat, light as wind yet full of power. She knows those writers cannot understand, because they do not look with the fighter's eyes. They need a story. But those who witnessed need no embellishment. They remember the truth. Aiko did not almost win. Bruce did not almost lose. It was not a fight, but a reminder that some levels exist beyond winning and losing. And that 1-inch stop that night, despite the press trying to blur it, continues to haunt everyone present like an unanswered question no one yet has the courage to face. Tokyo that night is covered in a thin mist, neon lights reflecting down the streets. After all the media chaos and discussions spreading across Japan, Bruce and Dan return to their small hotel in Shinjuku. The room is so quiet you can hear distant trains fading like the slow breath of the city. Bruce sits by the window, red and blue neon lights falling across his face and shifting patches like thoughts drifting silently. He says nothing. Dan watches him for a long time, sensing an invisible weight in the air, the weight of a moment he knows will become history. Then Dan speaks, breaking the stillness. "What if she had hit you?" A simple question, yet carrying both worry and confusion from someone who witnessed the inexplicable. Bruce keeps looking out the window a few more seconds, as if hearing the question from somewhere farther than this room. Finally he answers, so softly it seems the reply has long existed. "Then I would have learned something." Dan frowns slightly. He is not entirely surprised, but the answer still unsettles him. "You mean you wouldn't care if you lost?" Bruce shakes his head, not to deny but to correct the understanding. Loss only exists for those who fight to win. I did not come to Budokan to win. I came to understand. Those words fall into the room like a stone dropped into still water. It makes no loud splash, but sends ripples spreading outward forever. Dan sits up straighter, voice lower. "But you knew how strong she is. That Usiro Moashigeri, if it had landed." "I knew," Bruce interrupts. "And that's why I stepped into range." Dan looks at him, really looks. "Weren't you afraid?" Bruce smiles, a gentle but deep smile. "Of course I was afraid, but that fear is my teacher. If I avoid all danger, I learn nothing new." He turns and leans against the wall, street light creating a thin halo around his face. To know how sharp a blade is, he says, you have to bring your hand close to the blade. Silence falls again. Dan thinks, then asks the question he has carried since leaving Budokan. So, what did you learn from her? Bruce answers, I learned that perfect technique can become chains. Aiko is perfect, but that very perfection leaves her no room to change. He traces an invisible path with his hand. Jeet Kune does not try to destroy karate. It frees people from believing one form is the final one. Dan chuckles softly. You're sounding like a philosopher again. Bruce shrugs. Martial arts are not just physical collision. They are collision of perception. A light breeze slips through the window crack, carrying the scent of ramen from the nearby street. Tokyo below them remains bright, noisy, moving, but the small room feels detached from the flow of time. Dan continues, you know the Japanese will remember tonight for a very long time. Bruce turns to look at him, eyes not proud but clear. They don't need to remember me, just remember the moment that made them question. Dan nods very slowly. Bruce adds, when a martial artist asks a question, he begins to grow. When he thinks he has all the answers, he begins to die. That statement leaves Dan unable to argue. He leans back in his chair, looking at his friend as if watching a mountain shift. Do you think they will hate you? Bruce shrugs again, lightly as if talking about the weather. Maybe, but that changes nothing. What I need to do is keep learning. What they need to do is decide whether to step through the door. He walks to the window, looking down at the flow of Tokyo people, like looking at a current larger than his own life. I fight not to prove I am stronger, Bruce says. I fight to understand. Every dodge, every near miss, every second facing danger teaches me what books cannot. Dan looks at Bruce and sees not absolute confidence, but absolute trust in the path he walks. And that, Dan says quietly, is why you are different from everyone. Bruce does not answer immediately. Then he turns and says a sentence Dan knows will echo long after they leave Tokyo. Fight not to win, fight to understand. And in that small Shinjuku room, under the trembling neon light, Dan realizes that the Budokan night did not only change Japanese karate, it also revealed why Bruce Lee would become a legend the world would never forget. Many years after the Budokan night, Tokyo changed. Japanese karate changed. The world of martial arts changed. But the story of that strange demonstration never faded. Takeda Aiko continued competing for another decade, standing on the tatami for 10 more years as the unassailable symbol of modern karate. She won 23 more championships, raising her winning streak to 85 undefeated fights, a feat Japanese media hailed as the final bastion of women's Budo. But amid the medals, the cheers, the praises, and the stage lights, she always carried one single moment that never left her. The moment a small man stopped his hand 1 inch from her throat. Many students asked her, "Sensei, what was your hardest fight?" They expected stories of bone-breaking kicks, breathless matches, ferocious opponents from across Japan. But Aiko always answered calmly, "My hardest fight was the one no one counts as a fight. The one that lasted 3 minutes. The one where I was not hit but was defeated." The students' eyes widened. Aiko only smiled and told slowly but without hiding about that man. How he evaded strikes as if passing through wind. How he looked at her not as an opponent, but as a puzzle to understand. How he stopped his hand close enough to prove he could finish her, yet far enough to prove he chose not to. "Why didn't he knock you down, Sensei?" a girl asked. Aiko looked up at the dojo ceiling, eyes distant as if recalling a door that opened many years ago. "Because he did not come to win," she said. "He came to understand." That answer became a guiding principle for generations after, not only in karate, but in life itself. When Aiko retired at 39, a tribute ceremony was held for her at Budokan. Once again, white lights poured down on the tatami. Once again, her footsteps echoed in the silence of thousands. But this time, when asked about her glorious career, she did not mention the mawashi-geri kicks that shook the nation. Did not mention the years of harsh training in Aomori snow. Did not mention the 85-fight undefeated streak Japan regarded as heritage. She only said, "I once thought winning was everything. But then I met someone who made me understand that some battles are not for winning, but for seeing oneself." Those words spread like a long exhale, making many in the audience bow their heads, not from sadness, but from understanding. And the young karateka, those who only heard legends of Bruce Lee and never saw him perform in Japan, recorded that sentence with all the reverence they could carry. In the years that followed, whenever Aiko visited local dojos, she always retold the 1971 Budokan story, like a secret handed down through generations. Not to diminish herself, not to deify Bruce Lee, but to remind that karate and every martial art survives by knowing how to change, how to question, how to ask the right question at the right time. And across the Pacific, Bruce Lee continued his journey, taking Jeet Kune Do from small Seattle rooms to Hollywood sets, from personal philosophy to a worldwide flame influencing martial arts everywhere. But for those who were in Budokan, Bruce Lee was not just a movie star or martial legend. He was the moment a door opened, the moment karate looked in the mirror and saw a different shape of itself, the moment an undefeated champion bowed not from defeat, but from recognizing a new depth of Budo. Every February, Aiko quietly visits Budokan when it is empty. She stands in the exact spot from that year, looks down at the tatami, and closes her eyes, as if still feeling the light breath of that man pass by. Not to relive the past, but to remind herself that a martial artist's journey never ends with a win or loss. It ends when they stop learning. And Aiko makes sure she never stops. If anyone asks her, "What is the most important thing Sensei learned in life?" she answers immediately, that true strength is not in the strike, but in knowing when not to strike. The story ends there, but the legacy does not. Thank you for following the story to the end. Please subscribe so you don't miss the next parts. See you again in the next inspiring and surprising journey.